Chapter 1. The Blood-Stained Veil. The rain fell like confession over the cobblestones of Ashenmore, turning the narrow streets into rivers of black glass. Alara Thorne pressed herself against the stone wall of the alley, her breath coming in shallow gasps that misted in the October air. Her wedding dress, what remained of it, clung to her body in tatters, the ivory silk now gray with grime and something darker. Blood. Not hers. Not yet. She shouldn't have run. Lady Pembroke had made that clear during the ceremony, when Alara's soon-to-be husband had smiled that cruel smile and whispered what he would do to her on their wedding night. The things he'd done to his first wife, the way she'd disappeared. So Alara had run. Now, 3 hours past midnight, she was lost in the old quarter where even the watch refused to patrol after dark. The buildings leaned toward each other like conspirators, their windows dark and watchful. Behind her, footsteps echoed, steady, unhurried. They'd been following her for the last mile. "You can't hide forever, Mrs. Ashford." Her husband's voice carried through the rain, slurred with drink and rage. "It's already done. The papers are signed. You're mine." Ilara's fingers found the rough brick, scraped raw from her desperate flight through the city. Her legs trembled. She'd been running for so long. Not just tonight, for months, years perhaps. Running from her father's debts, from the arrangement that had sold her like livestock, from the future that waited with hungry teeth. The footsteps grew closer. She stumbled forward, deeper into the alley, knowing it was foolish but unable to stop. The passage narrowed until her shoulders brushed both walls. Dead end, of course it was. Tonight, of all nights, even the city conspired against her. Behind her, Thomas Ashford appeared, his silhouette blocking the only exit. He'd removed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, preparing. "Found you." Alara's back hit the wall. Her voice, when it came, surprised her with its steadiness. Don't. He laughed, the sound wet and ugly. "You've embarrassed me in front of every important family in Ashenmore. Do you know what they're saying? That I couldn't even control my own bride." He took a step forward. "I'm going to teach you what happens to women who humiliate me." She looked for a weapon, anything. Found only shadows and rain. Her hands curled into fists, though she knew it was useless. Thomas was twice her size, and the law was on his side. A husband had rights. Please? The word tasted like ash. She hated herself for saying it. Too late for please. Thomas lunged. Alara closed her eyes. The impact never came. Instead, she heard something else. A sound like silk tearing, followed by Thomas's scream. Her eyes snapped open to find her husband suspended 3 feet off the ground, held by a hand wrapped around his throat. The hand belonged to a man who hadn't been there a heartbeat before. The stranger was tall, dressed in black that seemed to drink the lamplight. Dark hair fell across a face that might have been carved from marble. Too perfect, too still. But it was his eyes that made Alara's breath catch. Silver gray, luminous in the darkness, fixed on Thomas with the cold attention of a predator. She said, "Don't." The stranger's voice was quiet, cultured and absolutely devoid of mercy. Thomas clawed at the hand on his throat, his feet kicking uselessly. What? You weren't listening." The stranger tilted his head, studying Thomas the way one might study an insect. "I dislike men who don't listen to women. Let him go." Alara found her voice, though it shook. "Please, he's not worth—" Those silver eyes shifted to her, and Alara felt the weight of their attention like a physical thing. Something ancient looked out from behind them. Something that had seen empires rise and crumble. "Are you certain?" he asked. "Men like this rarely stop. They escalate." The truth of it settled in her stomach like a stone. She thought of Thomas's first wife, of the other women before her, of all the women who would come after, because men like Thomas Ashford were never satisfied with just one victim. She couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't condone murder, even of a monster. Couldn't quite manage to argue for mercy either. The stranger seemed to read her hesitation. Something that might have been disappointment flickered across his face. "As you wish." He released Thomas, who crumpled to the wet stones, gasping. But before Thomas could scramble away, The stranger crouched beside him. His movements were fluid, inhuman in their grace. He caught Thomas's chin, forcing eye contact. "You will remember tonight differently," he said, each word precise. "You will remember that your bride died in a carriage accident on the way to the church. You will grieve appropriately. You will never marry again. And you will donate half your fortune to the Ashenmore Women's Shelter." His eyes began to glow, silver light bleeding into the rain-soaked air. "Do you understand?" "Yes." Thomas's voice was hollow, distant. "I understand. Good." The stranger released him. "Go home. Mourn your loss." Thomas stood on shaking legs and walked away without looking back, his gait stiff and mechanical. Within moments, the darkness had swallowed him whole. Alara pressed harder against the wall, her heart hammering against her ribs. "What did you do to him?" "Ensured he won't trouble you again." The stranger straightened, and Alara realized just how tall he was. He studied her with those impossible eyes, taking in her ruined dress, her bleeding feet, the bruise already forming on her cheek. "You're injured." "I'm alive." She lifted her chin, refusing to cower. "What are you?" A faint smile ghosted across his lips, there and gone so quickly she might have imagined it. "Dangerous." He removed his coat and held it out to her. "You're shivering," she was. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her hollow and cold. But she didn't take the coat. "Tell me what you are." He lowered the garment but didn't put it back on. Rain beaded on his skin like diamonds and didn't seem to touch him at all. "You already know," she did. Some primitive part of her brain had recognized it the moment those silver eyes met hers. The stories her grandmother used to tell, the warnings whispered in taverns after dark. Vampire. The word felt ridiculous and terrifying in equal measure. "Yes." He said it simply, without pride or shame. "And you're bleeding in the worst part of Ashenmore during the darkest hours of night. You have two choices. Come with me and live, or stay here and become someone else's prey." He gestured to the shadows beyond the alley. "There are things older and hungrier than me in these streets. Why would you help me?" His expression shifted, something complex passing behind those ancient eyes. Pain, perhaps, or memory, because no one helped her. Before Alara could ask who her was, he turned and began walking. She watched his retreating form, weighing impossible choices. Trust a monster who'd saved her, or face the monsters she knew waited in the dark. Alara looked down at her bleeding hands. At the wedding ring she'd never wanted, still cold on her finger. Then she ran after the vampire, into a future more terrifying than anything she'd left behind. Chapter 2. The House of Silence. The vampire's home was not what Alara expected. She'd imagined a crumbling castle, perhaps, or some gothic monstrosity dripping with cobwebs and melodrama. Instead, he led her to a townhouse in the merchant quarter. Elegant, understated, the kind of place a wealthy banker might own. Gas lamps flickered behind mullioned windows. Iron railings gleamed in the rain. He unlocked the door without a word and held it open. Alara hesitated on the threshold, suddenly aware of how thoroughly she'd abandoned every rule her mother had taught her. Never enter a strange man's home. Never trust beautiful faces. Never, ever follow vampires into the dark. "You can still leave," he said, reading her hesitation. "I won't stop you." But where would she go? Back to her father's house, where he'd already spent her bride price? To the church, where they'd ask what she'd done to make her husband strike her? The world had no place for a woman who ran from her wedding, who came home bleeding and unwed and ruined. Alara stepped inside. The interior matched the exterior, tasteful, expensive, surprisingly warm. A fire burned in the hearth of the entrance hall, though she hadn't seen him light it. Persian rugs softened the hardwood floors. Paintings lined the walls, old masters she recognized from her brief education. Everything spoke of wealth accumulated slowly, carefully, over lifetimes. "Third floor," he said, locking the door behind them with 3 separate bolts. "Guest room. You'll find clothing in the wardrobe and a bathing room attached. The doors all lock from the inside." He paused. "I suggest you use them. You're locking me in? I'm giving you the ability to lock me out." His silver eyes met hers, and she saw the warning there. "I'm not as civilized as I appear, Miss Thorne." Elara Thorne. She wouldn't use Thomas's name. Wouldn't let it stain her tongue. Not Mrs. Ashford. Never that. Something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe. "Elara, then." He said her name carefully, as if testing its weight. "I'm Caspian Draven, Lord of the Third House of Ashenmore, and you're standing in territory claimed under the Covenant of 1603, which means, for the duration of your stay, you're under my protection." He tilted his head. "It also means you're in considerably more danger than you realize. Because you're a vampire. Because I'm this vampire." He moved to the fire, and Elara noticed for the first time how careful his movements were. Controlled. As if he was constantly aware of his own strength. "The third house has enemies. They'll smell you on me before the sun rises. They'll wonder why I've brought a human here. They'll assume—" He trailed off. "What will they assume?" His jaw tightened. "That you're food, or a pet, or a political gesture I'm too proud to explain." He turned to face her fully, and the firelight caught the sharp planes of his face. Beautiful, yes, but cold, distant. "Any of which makes you a target." Elara's legs finally gave out. She sank onto a velvet settee, her ruined dress pooling around her like an accusation. "I don't understand any of this. Houses, covenants. I thought vampires were just stories. Stories usually have truth buried in them." Caspian moved to a cabinet and withdrew a crystal decanter filled with something dark. Wine, she hoped. He poured 2 glasses, brought one to her. "Drink. It will help with the shock." She accepted it with shaking hands, took a sip. Port rich and warming. "Not blood. Thank God, not blood." "There are 5 houses in Ashenmore," Caspian said, remaining standing. He didn't drink from his own glass. "We've existed in the shadows for 4 centuries, bound by laws older than your country. The covenant requires us to hide what we are, to feed only from the willing, to never turn humans without the council's consent." His voice went flat. "We are civilized monsters, Miss Thorne, but monsters nonetheless. Why did you help me?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. He was silent for a long moment, staring into his untouched wine. "Because you reminded me of someone," he finally said. "And because I'm tired of men like your husband existing with impunity." "Who did I remind you of?" "Someone I failed." He set down his glass with careful precision. "Someone I couldn't save. Don't make me regret giving you a second chance she never had." The pain in his voice was raw, unexpected. Elara found herself wanting to ask more, but something in his posture warned her away. Fresh grief, still bleeding. "The guest room," he said, changing the subject with obvious effort. "3rd floor, last door on the right. Don't open the door at the end of the hall. Don't go into the basement. Don't leave the house after dark without me." He met her eyes. "And don't invite anyone inside, no matter how human they appear." "Will you?" She hated how small her voice sounded. "Will you feed? Tonight?" His expression shuddered completely. "I feed only from those who offer freely, and you've offered nothing." He moved toward the stairs. "Lock your door, Elara Thorne. Trust nothing in this house, including me." He was gone before she could respond, moving with that unnatural speed. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, then a door closing somewhere above. Elara sat alone in the firelit room, listening to the old house settle around her. Every creak sounded like footsteps. Every shadow seemed to move. She thought about running again, but where? Dawn was still hours away, and Caspian had been right about one thing. There were worse things than him in the darkness. She climbed the stairs slowly, her bleeding feet leaving faint marks on the carpet. The 3rd floor was quieter, insulated somehow. She found the guest room exactly where he'd said, a beautiful space done in blues and grays, with a 4-poster bed that looked like it belonged in a palace. The wardrobe held women's clothing in her size. That should have been impossible, but nothing tonight followed normal rules. She found a nightgown, soft cotton that smelled of lavender. In the bathing room, someone had already drawn a bath, steam rising from copper tub. Elara locked the bedroom door. Then she locked the bathroom door too. Only then did she let herself cry. For her ruined wedding, her lost future, her complete and total unraveling. She cried until the bathwater grew cold, until she had no tears left. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a borrowed robe, she noticed something she'd missed before. On the bedside table, someone had left a small tray, bread, cheese, apple slices, a glass of water, a note in elegant script, "You're safe here. Sleep." Solara touched the note, then looked at the locked door. At the window showing nothing but darkness and rain, at the foreign room that somehow felt safer than anywhere she'd been in years. She climbed into the enormous bed and, against all reason, slept. In the room above, Caspian Draven stood at his window and watched the rain. His hands gripped the sill hard enough to crack the wood. He'd lied to her. He knew exactly why he'd saved her. And it had nothing to do with redemption. Chapter 3. The morning after. Ilara woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows, and the distant sound of rain still pattering against glass. For one blissful moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back. The wedding, the chase, the vampire with silver eyes who'd saved her from a husband she'd never wanted. She sat up slowly, her body cataloging yesterday's violence. Bruises on her arms, cuts on her feet, the dull ache in her ribs where Thomas had grabbed her, but also warmth, safety, the peculiar comfort of waking in a locked room where nothing had tried to kill her. The morning light revealed details she'd missed in her exhaustion. The room was beautiful but impersonal, like a well-appointed hotel. No photographs, no personal effects, just expensive furniture and walls the color of fog. On the dresser, someone had left more clothing. A simple day dress in deep green, stockings, proper shoes that looked exactly her size. Ilara rose and dressed, her hands shaking slightly as she fastened the buttons. The dress fit perfectly. That shouldn't have been possible. She unlocked her door and stepped into the hallway, listening. The house was silent in the way old buildings never truly are. No creaking floorboards, no settling walls. Just a profound quiet that felt almost expectant. The stairs led her back to the entrance hall. In daylight, the townhouse was even more impressive. Crown molding, wainscoting, that careful blend of wealth and taste. But still no signs of life. No servants bustling about. No sounds from the kitchen. "Good morning." Ilara spun, her heart leaping. Caspian stood in the doorway to what looked like a study, dressed simply in shirt sleeves and waistcoat. Without his coat and the dramatic lighting of last night, he looked almost human. Almost. The silver eyes and impossible stillness gave him away. "You're awake," she said, then felt foolish. Of course he was awake. I don't sleep as humans do. He gestured to the study. "I've prepared breakfast. You should eat." She followed him into a room lined with books. Thousands of them, floor to ceiling, leather-bound and ancient. A small table by the window held an elaborate spread. Eggs, toast, jam, tea, fruit. Enough for 3 people. "I wasn't sure what you'd like," Caspian said, not quite looking at her. "I don't eat anymore. I've forgotten the preferences." Ilara sat slowly, eyeing the food with sudden suspicion. "Is it safe?" "It's not poisoned, if that's what you're asking." He moved to the window, keeping his distance. "I have no reason to drug you. If I wanted you incapacitated, there are easier methods." The casual mention of such things should have terrified her. Instead, Ilara found herself oddly reassured by his bluntness. At least he wasn't pretending to be something he wasn't. She took a bite of toast. It was perfect, warm, buttered, real. Her stomach, empty since yesterday morning, reminded her that existential terror didn't eliminate physical needs. She ate while Caspian watched the street below, his posture rigid. "You're nervous," she observed. "I'm cautious. There's a difference." He turned slightly, the sunlight catching his profile. "You slept for 14 hours. It's past noon. By now, every house in the city knows you're here." "How would they know? Vampires have excellent senses. Your scent is all over me." He said it matter-of-factly, but color touched his pale cheeks. They'll have tracked it, drawn conclusions. Some of those conclusions will be problematic. Ilara set down her teacup. "What kind of problematic?" "The kind where they assume you're my human consort and try to use you against me." He moved from the window, pacing now. The controlled grace was gone, replaced by something restless, agitated. The kind where the second house, which has wanted my territory for decades, decides you're a weakness worth exploiting. Then why did you bring me here? The question stopped him mid-stride. He turned to face her fully, and for the first time, she saw past the cold mask, saw frustration, anger, and something that looked almost like fear. Because I'm a fool, he said quietly. Because I've spent 2 centuries being careful, being strategic, being exactly what the third house needed me to be. And then I saw you in that alley and I stopped thinking. His hands clenched at his sides. I thought I could keep you hidden for a few days, give you time to heal, to plan, but I underestimated how quickly word would spread. So what happens now? Now we prepare for visitors. He crossed to a cabinet, withdrew a small wooden box. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a silver pendant on a delicate chain. The symbol etched into the metal looked like a stylized rose wrapped in thorns. This is the seal of the third house. While you wear it, you're under my formal protection. Other vampires can't touch you without declaring war. He held it out. And Alara noticed his hand wasn't quite steady. That's a lot of responsibility for someone you just met, she said. Yes. He didn't deny it. But the alternative is sending you back out there, unprotected, with my scent on you. They'd have you within the hour. Alara took the pendant, felt the weight of it. The silver was warm, as if it held heat from his hand. Why would they want me? Information, leverage. Some of the older ones see humans as toys. His voice went cold. And some still remember when we didn't need consent. The implications settled in her stomach like stones. She fastened the chain around her neck, felt the pendant settle against her collarbone. Thank you. For the warning, for all of this, Caspian looked away. Don't thank me yet. You don't understand what you've walked into. Then explain it to me. He was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing his words. Finally, he moved to one of the bookshelves, pulled down a leather journal. This is the covenant, the laws that govern us. He set it on the table between them. Read it, learn it. Because if you're going to survive in my world, you need to understand the rules. Alara opened the journal, saw page after page of elegant script in multiple languages. Some entries were dated 1603, others were more recent, added in different hands. I'll need to go out tonight, Caspian continued. To the council meeting. They'll want to see you, verify you're here of your own will. It's a formality. Will it be dangerous? Everything about this situation is dangerous. He met her eyes. But I'll be with you, and I don't break my promises. What promise did you make? To protect you. His voice was soft but absolute. Even from myself. Before Alara could respond, a sound echoed through the house. The distinctive knock of the front door's brass ring. 3 sharp raps, perfectly spaced. Caspian went completely still. Don't move, he said quietly. Don't speak. Let me handle this. Who is it? His jaw tightened. Someone I was hoping we'd have more time before facing. He moved to the entrance hall, and Alara followed despite his warning, staying in the doorway. Through the study door, she watched him approach the front door. Watched him straighten his shoulders, compose his features into that cold mask. He opened the door. Standing on the threshold was a woman who made Alara's breath catch. She was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Dark hair cascading past her shoulders, skin like porcelain, dressed in crimson silk that matched her painted lips. But it was her eyes that commanded attention. Gold, bright as coins, fixed on Caspian with unmistakable hunger. Caspian, darling, the woman purred. I heard you'd taken in a stray. Chapter 4. The Rival. The woman's golden eyes slid past Caspian, finding Alara with predatory precision. Her smile widened, revealing teeth too white, too sharp. There she is, the little human causing such a stir. Caspian didn't move from the doorway, his body a barrier between the vampire and his home. Lady Morgana, you weren't invited. The Covenant allows council members to verify the welfare of humans claimed under house protection. Morgana's voice was honey over steel. Surely you remember the clause. Article 7, I believe. written after that unfortunate incident in 1847. I remember. Caspian's tone was flat, controlled. Ilara is here of her own free will. She wears my seal. There's nothing to verify. Then you won't mind if I speak with her directly? Morgana tilted her head, and her dark hair moved like water. Just a few questions, to ensure she understands the commitment she's made. Ilara stepped forward before she could stop herself. Some instinct, pride, perhaps, or simple stubbornness, refused to let her cower. I can speak for myself. Both vampires turned to look at her. Caspian's expression was warning. Morgana's was delighted. Can you, indeed? Morgana's gaze traveled over Ilara with insulting thoroughness, taking in the borrowed dress, the healing bruises, the silver pendant. How refreshing. Most of Caspian's pets are too frightened to form words. I'm not his pet. No? Morgana's smile was razor sharp. Then what are you, little mortal? His newest charity case? A blood bag with delusions of significance? She leaned against the doorframe, deliberately casual. Or perhaps something more. Intimate? Heat flooded Ilara's cheeks, but she held her ground. I'm someone he helped when I needed it, that's all. How noble. Morgana's attention shifted back to Caspian. And what does the third house get in return for this selfless assistance? Because we both know you don't do anything without calculating the advantage. My motivations are my own business. Not when they affect the balance of power in Ashenmoor. Morgana's voice hardened. You've been alone for 2 centuries, Caspian. No human companions, no political alliances, nothing but your books and your precious control. Now suddenly you're sheltering a runaway bride. During the equinox negotiations. She laughed, the sound brittle. Forgive me for finding that suspicious. Ilara looked between them, trying to understand the undercurrents. What are the equinox negotiations? She doesn't even know. Morgana shook her head mockingly. Tell her, Caspian. Tell her what's really at stake. Caspian's jaw tightened, but he spoke. Every 50 years, the 5 houses renegotiate territory boundaries and feeding rights. The negotiations begin in 3 days. His silver eyes met Ilara's. The second house, Morgana's house, has been trying to absorb the third house for decades. They argue we're too small, too isolated, that I'm an ineffective leader. Because you are, Morgana interjected. One vampire does not a house make. You have no progeny, no allies, no leverage. Just a crumbling legacy and stubborn pride. I have the covenant, Caspian said coldly, and the council's recognition. For now. Morgana pushed off the doorframe. But appearances matter, Caspian. You know that. And appearing with a human girl at the council meeting? Wearing your seal? She tisked softly. It looks desperate. Like you're scrambling to prove you can still engage with mortals, still fulfill the duties of a house lord. Or it looks like I'm honoring the covenant spirit. Caspian's voice was ice. Protecting the vulnerable. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? We're supposed to survive. Morgana's golden eyes flashed. And sentimentality is a luxury you can't afford. Not with the second house circling. Not with Marcus already calling for a dissolution vote. The name made Caspian flinch, barely, but Ilara caught it. Marcus doesn't have the numbers. He will by the equinox. Morgana stepped closer, and Ilara noticed how the sunlight didn't quite touch her, as if she existed slightly outside normal space. Unless you can prove you're still capable of leading, of making strategic decisions instead of emotional ones. Her gaze slid to Ilara again. Keeping her makes you look weak. Then I'll be weak. The words were quiet, but absolute. She stays. Something flickered across Morgana's face. Surprise, maybe, or calculation. You care about her. It wasn't a question. After one night, you actually care. I care about doing what's right. What's right? Morgana laughed again, sharper this time. You've been alive for 300 years, Caspian. When has right ever mattered in our world? She moved closer still, until she was inches from the threshold. The invisible barrier of the house's wards held her back, but barely. Let me offer you some advice, old friend. Send the girl away. Find her somewhere safe, somewhere far from Ashenmoor, before Marcus decides she's the perfect weapon to use against you. She's under my protection. Protection you can't guarantee. Morgana's voice dropped, became almost gentle. You're one vampire, Caspian. One very old, very tired vampire who hasn't fed properly in months. I can smell your hunger from here. Her eyes gleamed. How long before instinct overrides intention? How long before you slip, just once, and give Marcus exactly the excuse he needs to claim you're unfit? The accusation hung in the air like poison. Alara watched Caspian's hands curl into fists, watched the muscle in his jaw tick. He was fighting something. Control, maybe. Or the truth of Morgana's words. Get off my property, he said quietly. I'm trying to help you. You're trying to eliminate competition before the negotiations. Caspian's eyes blazed silver. You want the third house's territory as much as Marcus does. You're just more subtle about it. Morgana's smile returned, colder than before. Guilty as charged, but that doesn't make me wrong about the girl. She looked past him one more time, meeting Alara's gaze directly. Be careful, little mortal. Men who save broken things usually want to own them. Then she was gone, simply not there anymore, as if she'd never existed. The space where she'd stood felt colder. Caspian closed the door slowly and locked all 3 bolts. He stood there for a long moment, his forehead pressed against the wood. Is it true? Alara asked quietly. What she said about Marcus? About the vote? Yes. He didn't turn around. The second house has been consolidating power for years. They want to reduce the 5 houses to 3. I'm the easiest target. Because you're alone. Because I refuse to play their games. He finally faced her, and Alara saw exhaustion in his eyes. Not physical. Something deeper. Soul deep. I won't create progeny just to bolster my numbers. Won't bind humans into servitude for political advantage. Won't compromise what little honor I have left. His voice went soft. Even if it costs me everything. Alara moved closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. She said you haven't fed properly in months. What does that mean? It means I'm careful about whose blood I take. It means consent matters more to me than hunger. He met her eyes. It means Morgana is right. I'm weakening myself with principles that no one else shares. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you decent. He laughed, the sound hollow. Decency is a death sentence in vampire politics. Then maybe vampire politics needs to change. The words hung between them, naive and dangerous, and somehow exactly right. Caspian stared at her as if seeing her for the first time, really seeing her, not just the broken girl he'd saved, but the person underneath. You have no idea what you're suggesting, he said softly. Then teach me. Alara touched the pendant at her throat. You said I needed to understand the rules, so teach me. Tell me everything about the houses, the council, the negotiations. She lifted her chin. If I'm going to be a liability, I might as well be an informed one. Something shifted in Caspian's expression. Respect, perhaps, or the beginning of something more dangerous than either of them was ready to name. All right, he said finally. But first, you need to know what you're really agreeing to. He held out his hand. After only a heartbeat's hesitation, Alara took it. His skin was cool but not cold. Solid. Real. Welcome to the war, Caspian said. Chapter 5. Lessons in Blood. The library on the 4th floor was different from the study below. Where the first had been organized and pristine, this one felt lived in, almost wild. Books spilled from shelves in precarious stacks. Maps covered the walls, marked with symbols Alara didn't recognize. In the center of the room stood a massive table scattered with documents, letters sealed with wax, and what looked like genealogical charts spanning centuries. "This is where I work," Caspian said, closing the door behind them. "Where I've been trying to keep the third house alive through paperwork and precedent." He gestured to the chaos. "For all the good it's done." Alara moved to the nearest map. It showed Ashenmore divided into 5 distinct sections, each marked with a different symbol. The territories? Yes, red for the first house, the oldest, most traditional. They control the financial district. His finger traced the map. Gold for the second house, Morgana and Marcus. They have the docks, the trade routes, blue for the 4th house, the artist's quarter, green for the 5th house, which oversees the university and hospitals. And yours? Silver, the old merchant quarter where we are now. His voice was quiet. Once the 3rd house was the largest. We had 12 members, controlled half the city's commerce. Now it's just me and empty rooms. What happened to the others? Caspian was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. Some died in the purges of 1823. Some left to join other houses. And some... He trailed off, moved to the window. Some I lost to my own failures. Alara heard the weight behind those words. The same grief she'd glimpsed last night. The woman I reminded you of? His shoulders tensed. Her name was Isabel. She was human like you. Came to me seeking protection from a violent marriage like you. He laughed bitterly. History repeating itself, it seems. What happened to her? I was arrogant. Thought I could shelter her without consequences. Thought the other houses would respect the covenant. He turned, and his silver eyes were haunted. They didn't. The second house used her to draw me out. Marcus challenged me to a duel, her freedom or my territory. I thought I could win. His hands clenched. I was wrong. Alara's chest tightened. She died? Worse. I failed to protect her, and in my desperation I offered her the only escape I could. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I turned her, without the council's permission, without understanding what it would cost her. The confession hung in the air like a wound. Alara moved closer, instinct overriding caution. Where is she now? Gone. The word was hollow. Turning someone doesn't just change their body. It changes everything. Their desires, their humanity, their soul. Isabel woke up as something she never wanted to be. She hated what I'd made her. He met Alara's eyes. She lasted 3 months before she walked into the sunrise. The image hit Alara like a physical blow. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was my fault. Caspian turned back to the map, his voice hardening. I broke the covenant to save her and destroyed her in the process. That's why the third house is dying. That's why I'm alone. The council stripped me of the right to create progeny, made me watch as my house crumbled. He touched the silver section of the map. This territory is all I have left. And Marcus knows it. Is that why Morgana came? To remind you what's at stake. Partially, but also to assess you. He glanced at her. To see if history really is repeating itself. If I'm fool enough to care about another human woman. And are you? The question was too bold, too intimate. Alara knew it the moment the words left her mouth. But Caspian didn't look away. I don't know yet, he said honestly. I know I won't let what happened to Isabel happen to you. I know I'll protect you, whatever the cost. Beyond that, he shook his head. I'm trying very hard not to examine my motivations too closely. Alara's heart beat faster. She moved to the table, focusing on the documents to give herself space to think. One letter caught her eye. The wax seal showed a wolf's head. What's this? Correspondence from the first house. Lord Nathaniel. Caspian came to stand beside her, careful to maintain distance. He's neutral in the territory disputes, old enough to remember when the covenant was young. If anyone will support me at the negotiations, it's him. But you're not sure he will. I'm not sure anyone will. Caspian's voice was tired. The vampire world values strength, Alara. Legacy. The ability to command and control. I have none of those things anymore. Just principles that look like weakness and history everyone wants to forget. Then why keep fighting? He was quiet for a moment, considering. Because if I surrender now, it sets a precedent. That isolation is failure. That compassion is liability. He met her eyes. That humans are disposable tools instead of people worth protecting. I can't let that become the new normal. Ilara felt something shift in her chest. Respect, yes, but also recognition. She knew what it was like to fight a battle everyone said was already lost. To cling to principles when surrender would be easier. Teach me, she said again. Everything. The houses, the politics, the blood laws. If I'm going to be at that council meeting, I need to understand what I'm walking into. Caspian studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, but first, you need to understand the most important rule. He moved to one of the bookshelves, pulled down a leather-bound volume. The Covenant has dozens of clauses, but they all stem from one central law: consent. He opened the book, showed her a page written in Latin with English translation below. A vampire cannot feed from an unwilling human, cannot turn someone without their knowledge and agreement, cannot use supernatural persuasion to override free will. His finger traced the words. This law is what separates us from monsters. Break it, and the council has the right to execute you. Is that common? The execution? More common than you'd think. Some of the older vampires resent the restriction. They remember the time before the Covenant, when humans were prey. His voice darkened. Marcus is one of them. He follows the letter of the law, but despises the spirit of it. And Morgana? Morgana is pragmatic. She'll follow whatever rules benefit her most. He closed the book. But she's not cruel, just ambitious. If you ever need help and I'm not available, she's safer than most. The admission seemed to cost him. Ilara realized he was giving her survival information, planning for the possibility he might not be able to protect her. You think something might happen to you? She said quietly. I think the negotiations are 3 days away, and I'm the weakest house lord in centuries. He set the book down. I think Marcus will push for dissolution, and I think if he succeeds, you'll need allies who aren't me. I don't want other allies. I want you alive. The words came out more forcefully than she'd intended. Caspian looked startled. Then something complicated crossed his face. Gratitude, pain, and a longing so raw it made Ilara's breath catch. Why? He asked softly. You barely know me. Because you saved me when you didn't have to. Because you're trying to protect people in a world that punishes kindness. She moved closer, drawn by something deeper than logic. Because when I look at you, I don't see a monster. I see someone who's been alone too long. Caspian's control visibly frayed. His silver eyes flashed brighter, and for a moment, Ilara glimpsed the predator beneath the gentleman's facade. The ancient thing that lived in his skin. You should see the monster, he said roughly. You should be terrified of me. I am terrified. Ilara's voice was steady despite the truth of it. But not of you. Of losing the first person in years who's made me feel like I matter. The confession hung between them, vulnerable and dangerous. Caspian's hand lifted. Whether to touch her face or push her away, Ilara would never know. Because at that moment, something shattered downstairs. Glass breaking, a door slamming open, then voices, multiple, speaking in a language Ilara didn't recognize. Caspian went perfectly still, every muscle tensing. Get behind me, he said quietly. Don't speak. Don't move. What is it? His eyes blazed silver bright. The second house, they're inside. Chapter 6. The breech Caspian moved with inhuman speed, positioning himself between Ilara and the door. His entire demeanor had transformed, the contemplative scholar replaced by something deadly and ancient. Stay exactly where you are, he commanded, his voice carrying an authority that made her bones ache to obey. Whatever happens, don't invite anyone in. Don't answer questions. Don't look them directly in the eyes. But you said the house had wards. Someone broke them. His jaw clenched, which means either I've been betrayed or the second house has decided to start the war early. The voices grew louder, accompanied by footsteps ascending the stairs. 3 distinct sets, moving with predatory confidence. Ilara's heart hammered against her ribs as Caspian reached beneath his vest and withdrew a silver blade, slender, wickedly sharp, etched with symbols that seemed to move in the lamplight. Is that blessed silver, one of the few things that can actually kill us? He gripped it with practiced ease. Stay behind me. The door exploded inward. 3 vampires filled the threshold, and Alara understood immediately why Caspian had told her not to look at them. They were beautiful in the way poisonous things are beautiful. Compelling, hypnotic, dangerous. The one in front was male, tall and broad-shouldered, with hair the color of wheat and eyes like frozen amber. He wore modern clothes but carried himself like a medieval lord. Marcus, Caspian said flatly. Breaking and entering. How very second house of you. Marcus smiled, revealing fangs. Paying a courtesy call on a fellow house lord. Surely that's not forbidden. His accent was old, aristocratic. Though I notice you seem tense. You destroyed my wards and forced entry into my home. Caspian's blade didn't waver. That's an act of war under the Covenant, is it? Marcus tilted his head. Or is it simply concern for a human in potential distress? His amber eyes found Alara, and she felt the weight of his attention like ice sliding down her spine. Tell me, girl, are you here willingly? Alara opened her mouth, but Caspian spoke first. Don't answer him. He's trying to establish grounds for intervention. I'm trying to ensure you're not holding her hostage. Marcus took a step forward, and the other 2 vampires, a woman with red hair and a young-looking man with dark skin, flanked him. Article 7 clearly states, I know what Article 7 states. I wrote half the amendments. Caspian's voice was ice. Alara is here of her own free will. She wears my seal. She's fed, clothed, and unharmed. You have no grounds. Then let her speak for herself. Marcus's smile widened. Unless you're afraid of what she might say? The challenge hung in the air. Alara could feel the trap in it, some political maneuvering she didn't fully understand. But she also felt Caspian's tension, the barely controlled violence radiating from him. I'm here because I choose to be, she said, keeping her voice steady. Lord Draven offered me sanctuary. I accepted. Sanctuary from what? The red-haired woman spoke for the first time, her voice honeyed and curious. What terrible fate were you fleeing, little human? That's none of your concern. Caspian shifted, angling his body more protectively. You verified her status. Now leave. In a moment. Marcus's attention never left Alara. I'm simply trying to understand Caspian's sudden interest in mortal affairs. 200 years of isolation and now this? During the equinox negotiations? He laughed softly. Forgive my skepticism. My motivations don't require your approval. No. But they do affect the power balance in Ashenmoor. Marcus finally looked at Caspian, and something cold glittered in his amber eyes. You're making yourself vulnerable, old friend. Attachments are liabilities in our world. Surely Isabel taught you that. Caspian moved so fast Alara didn't see it. One moment he was beside her. The next his blade was at Marcus's throat, silver edge drawing a thin line of blood that looked almost black in the lamplight. Say her name again, Caspian said quietly. And war be damned, I'll end you right here. The room went completely still. The other 2 vampires tensed, ready to strike, but Marcus held up a hand. His smile never faltered, even with a blade at his throat. There's the Caspian I remember, he said softly. The one who raised 3 cities for a woman who didn't want to live. The one who broke every law for love and lost everything. His eyes gleamed. Is this human worth repeating that mistake? Get out! Marcus studied him for a long moment, then stepped back slowly. The blade left a red line across his pale throat that healed even as Alara watched. As you wish. But understand something, Caspian. Bringing her to the council meeting will be seen as a declaration. That you're actively engaging in house politics again. That you're choosing a side. I'm not choosing anything except to honor the Covenant. The Covenant is words on paper. Power is what matters. Marcus straightened his collar. And power requires sacrifices, resources, a willingness to do what's necessary. His gaze slid to Alara again. Protecting one human while your house crumbles? That's not strategy. That's sentiment. Then I'm sentimental. Then you're finished. Marcus moved toward the door, his companions following. 3 days, Caspian. 3 days until the council votes on whether the third house has the right to continue existing. I suggest you spend that time wisely. He paused in the doorway, and consider whether she's really worth what you're about to lose. They were gone, simply vanished, as Morgana had, leaving only the scent of old blood and older magic. Caspian stood frozen, blade still raised, his chest heaving with unnecessary breaths. Ilara watched him struggle for control, watched the predator slowly recede beneath the surface. When he finally lowered the weapon, his hand was shaking. "I'm sorry," he said without turning around. "You shouldn't have seen that." "Seen what? You defending yourself in your own home?" Ilara moved closer despite the warning bells in her head. "He was trying to provoke you." He succeeded. Caspian's voice was hollow. "I nearly killed him. In front of witnesses. That would have given the second house everything they needed to call for my execution. But you didn't kill him. Only because you were here." He finally turned, and his silver eyes were haunted. "Only because I knew if I lost control, you'd be left alone with them." That fear was the only thing stronger than my rage. The admission hit Ilara harder than she expected. She touched the pendant at her throat, feeling its weight. "He mentioned Isabel to hurt you. To make you react?" "Yes. And it worked." Caspian moved to the window, staring out at the darkening sky. Marcus knew her. He was the one who challenged me, who forced my hand. He knows exactly how to break me. Then don't let him. Ilara came to stand beside him. "Don't give him that power. It's not that simple. Why not?" Caspian was quiet for a long moment. "Because every time I look at you, I see her. Every time I promise to protect you, I remember how I failed her. Every instinct I have screams that history is repeating itself, and this time I'll lose even more." He turned to face her fully. "Marcus is right about one thing. I'm making terrible strategic decisions because of you." "Then send me away." "I can't." The words were torn from him. "I should. Every logical part of me knows I should put you on a train to anywhere else and never look back. But I can't. Why not?" His control shattered. "Because for the first time in 200 years, I want something more than survival. Because you look at me like I'm worth saving. Because when you're in my home, the silence doesn't feel quite so suffocating." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Because I'm selfish enough to keep you here, even knowing it might destroy us both." Ilara's breath caught. The raw honesty in his words, the vulnerability in his ancient eyes. It was more intimate than any touch. She reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and placed her hand over his. His skin was cool, but solid. Real. He stared at their joined hands as if he'd forgotten what human contact felt like. "Then let me stay," she said quietly. "Let me choose this, knowing the risks. Let me fight beside you instead of being something you have to protect. You don't understand what you're offering. Then help me understand." She squeezed his hand. "You said you'd teach me everything, so teach me. Show me how to survive in your world, how to be useful instead of a liability." She lifted her chin. "How to help you win." Caspian searched her face, looking for doubt or fear or second thoughts. Whatever he found made something in his expression soften. "You're either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish," he said. "Probably both." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, the first real one she'd seen. It transformed his face, made him look younger, almost human. "All right," he said finally, "but we do this my way. You learn the rules, follow my lead, and if at any point I tell you to run, you run. No questions, no hesitation." "Agreed." "And Ilara?" His silver eyes held hers. "When this is over, when the council meets and the votes are cast, if the third house falls, I'm leaving Ashenmoor." "Going somewhere they can't follow?" He squeezed her hand gently. "You need to decide if you're coming with me, or if I'm letting you go." The question hung between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to examine. 3 days, Ilara said. 3 days, he agreed. Outside, the sun set completely, and in the darkness the city of vampires came alive. Chapter 7. Blood and Boundaries. The training began that night. Caspian led Ilara to the basement, the place he'd warned her never to enter. She understood why the moment they descended the stairs. The space beneath the townhouse was vast, far larger than the footprint above suggested. Stone walls, centuries old, lined with iron brackets that might once have held torches. Now gas lamps cast flickering shadows across what looked like a mixture of armory and ritual chamber. "This is where the third house used to gather," Caspian explained, his voice echoing off stone. "Back when there were enough of us to require meeting space. Weapons hung on the walls, swords, daggers, stakes, all gleaming with that same blessed silver. In the center of the room, a large circle had been carved into the floor, filled with symbols Alara recognized from the covenant text. Around the perimeter, dark stains marked the stone. "Blood?" she asked. "From binding rituals. Oaths." Caspian moved to a cabinet, began selecting items. "Every house has a sanctum like this. It's where we conduct our most important business." He glanced at her. "And where we train those who need to defend themselves. You're going to teach me to fight vampires? I'm going to teach you to survive them. There's a difference." He set several objects on a stone table. A silver knife, a vial of clear liquid, a leather cord with a small charm. "Physical combat is useless. We're too fast, too strong. But there are other defenses." He picked up the vial first. "Holy water, distilled from consecrated springs, blessed by clergy who understand what we are. It won't kill a vampire, but it burns like acid. Enough to give you time to escape." He handed it to her. "Keep this on you always." Alara took it carefully, feeling the weight. "Does it work on you?" "Yes." He met her eyes. "Everything I'm showing you works on me. Remember that." The statement carried weight beyond the words. He was giving her weapons against him, trusting her with his vulnerabilities. Next, he lifted the leather cord. The charm attached was a tiny silver cross, delicate but clearly old. Faith matters more than religion. This belonged to a nun who sheltered vampires during the purges. It's been blessed so many times the metal itself holds sacred power. He fastened it around her wrist. "Wear this, and most younger vampires won't be able to touch you without pain." "Most?" "The oldest ones, Marcus, Morgana, Lord Nathaniel. They've built up resistance, centuries of exposure." His fingers lingered on her wrist for a moment before he pulled away. "But it will still make them uncomfortable. Give you space." Finally, he picked up the silver knife. "This is the most important. Blessed silver through the heart is one of the few ways to truly kill us. Decapitation is the other." He turned it, letting the light catch the blade. "But you won't be able to get close enough to use it in a direct fight." "Then why give it to me?" "Because if I lose control, if something goes wrong, you'll need a way to end it." He placed the knife in her palm, closed her fingers around the hilt. "Promise me. If I become a danger to you, you won't hesitate." Alara stared at the weapon, at his hand covering hers. "I can't promise that." "You must." His voice was urgent, almost desperate. "Alara, you don't understand what bloodlust is like, what hunger can do to us. I'm stronger than most, more controlled, but I'm also starving. I haven't fed properly in 3 months, and having you here, your scent, your pulse." He broke off, stepped back. "If I slip, even for a moment, you need to be able to protect yourself. When did you last feed? That's not relevant. It is if you're weakening yourself because of me." She set the knife down. "The covenant says feeding requires consent, so I'm asking, when did you last drink blood?" Caspian turned away, but not before she saw the hunger flash in his silver eyes. 6 weeks ago. A willing donor from the 5th house, carefully negotiated. His shoulders were rigid. "Vampire metabolism is slow. I can last months between feedings if necessary. But you're not at your strongest." "No. And the council meeting is in 3 days." "Yes. Alara's mind worked through the implications. Marcus had known, had smelled Caspian's weakness, seen the way hunger made him vulnerable. That's why he'd come tonight, to test, to provoke, to assess exactly how diminished the Third House Lord had become. "You need to feed," she said quietly. "I'll manage. Will you? Can you face the council like this? Defend your house? Protect me?" She moved around to face him. "You said you wanted me to understand your world. So explain this to me. What happens if you go to the negotiations weakened?" Caspian's jaw clenched. "They'll see it as further evidence I'm unfit to lead, that I can't even maintain my own strength. Then feed. It's not that simple. Finding willing donors takes time. There are negotiations, contracts, medical screenings to ensure safety." He looked at her. "I don't just bite random people in alleys, Alara. I'm not a monster." "I know you're not." She took a breath, knowing what she was about to say would change everything. "That's why I'm offering." The silence that followed was absolute. Caspian stared at her as if she'd spoken a foreign language. "No." The word was flat, final. "Why not?" "Because..." He broke off, struggling for words. "Because you don't understand what you're offering. Because the act of feeding is intimate, invasive. Because I won't use you that way." "You're not using me if I consent." Alara kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You said the covenant is built on consent. So I'm consenting. Take what you need." "Alara, you told me to learn the rules. I'm learning. I'm choosing." She lifted her chin. "Unless you think I'm not capable of making that decision?" The challenge hung between them. Caspian looked torn, hungry and horrified in equal measure. "You have no idea what you're asking." "Then show me." "I could hurt you, could take too much, could..." His control was fraying, voice roughening. "The smell of your blood, this close, knowing you're offering. It's taking everything I have not to." "Then don't fight it." Alara moved closer, saw the way his pupils dilated, how his hands clenched into fists. "You said you needed to be strong for the council. So be strong. Let me help you." "Why?" The word was almost a growl. "Why would you do this?" "Because you saved me. Because you're fighting a war you might lose because of principles no one else values. Because..." She hesitated, then said the truth. "Because I trust you." Something broke in Caspian's expression. He closed his eyes, breathing hard. When he opened them again, they were blazing silver bright, and Alara saw the vampire fully for the first time, beautiful and terrible and desperately hungry. "If I do this," he said slowly, each word careful, "we do it properly, safely. I feed but only what I need. And the moment you want me to stop, you say so and I stop. Immediately. No matter how much I want to continue." "I understand. You need to be certain, Alara. Once we cross this line, everything changes between us." She knew that, felt it in the way the air seemed charged, in how her pulse thundered at her throat. This was trust of a kind she'd never given anyone. Vulnerability that terrified her. But looking at Caspian, at the war between need and honor in his eyes, she knew her answer. "I'm certain." He moved closer, slow and deliberate, giving her time to change her mind. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. His touch was gentle despite the hunger radiating from him. "We'll do this sitting down," he said quietly. "You'll be on my lap so I can monitor your heart rate. Stop if you weaken. And Alara..." His silver eyes held hers. "Thank you for this gift, for trusting me with something so precious." He guided her to a chair, sat, then carefully arranged her across his lap. one arm around her waist, secure but not imprisoning. His other hand tilted her head, exposing her throat. Ilara's heart hammered. She felt his breath against her skin, cool and steady. Felt the slight graze of fangs. "Last chance," he whispered. "I trust you," she whispered back. Caspian's lips brushed her throat once, reverent. Then his fangs pierced her skin. The pain was sharp, but brief. Then, sensation. Warmth spreading through her veins. A pulling feeling that wasn't quite pain and wasn't quite pleasure, but something entirely new. She felt Caspian's hand tighten on her waist, felt the rumble in his chest that might have been satisfaction or relief. Her vision swam slightly. Not unpleasant, just distant, as if she was floating. She felt safe in his arms, held carefully despite his obvious hunger. Then, just as the edges of her consciousness began to blur, he stopped, pulled back. His tongue swept across the wound and she felt it close. Seal, leave only the faintest ache. Caspian held her for a long moment, his forehead pressed to her shoulder. When he finally looked up, his eyes were clearer, brighter. Color had returned to his pale cheeks. "Are you all right?" His voice was rough, concerned. Ilara nodded, though she felt lightheaded. "Did you get enough?" A strange expression crossed his face, gratitude and guilt, and something deeper. "Yes, more than enough." He stood carefully, cradling her against his chest. "But you need rest, sugar, water." "I'm fine. You're not." He was already carrying her up the stairs. "You just gave blood to a starving vampire. Your body needs time to recover." Back in the main house, he settled her on the library sofa, wrapped her in blankets, brought her tea with so much sugar it was almost syrup. He hovered, checking her pulse, her color, asking questions until she laughed. "Caspian, I'm fine." "Really?" He knelt beside the sofa, taking her hand. "What you did tonight, it was beyond what I deserved, beyond what I should have accepted. You needed it." "That doesn't make it right." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "Thank you for trusting me, for everything." Ilara looked at him, at the vampire who'd saved her, sheltered her, armed her against his own kind, who just fed from her with such careful control that she barely felt weakened. "We're partners now," she said softly, "aren't we? In whatever comes next." Caspian's silver eyes met hers, and what she saw there made her breath catch. "Yes," he said quietly, "partners." But the word felt incomplete, insufficient for what was growing between them. 2 days until the council meeting, 2 days until everything changed. Chapter 8. The siege Ilara woke to silence, wrong silence, the kind that pressed against her eardrums like a held breath. She sat up in the guest room bed, disoriented. Moonlight streamed through the windows. It was still night then. She'd only slept a few hours after Caspian had insisted she rest following the feeding. The feeding. She touched her throat, felt the faintest tenderness where his fangs had pierced. The memory sent a confused rush of emotions through her. Intimacy and fear and something she wasn't ready to name. Then she heard it. A sound so faint she almost missed it. Glass breaking far below. Ilara's heart kicked into overdrive. She threw off the blankets, grabbed the silver knife Caspian had given her from the nightstand. Her hands shook as she crept to the door, pressed her ear against it. Voices, multiple, speaking that same unfamiliar language she'd heard when Marcus invaded. They were inside again. She eased the door open, every instinct screaming at her to lock herself in, to hide. But Caspian was somewhere in this house. If the second house had come back, if they were here to finish what Marcus started. She moved down the hallway on silent feet, blessing the thick carpets that muffled her steps. The voices grew louder as she approached the stairs. She recognized Marcus's aristocratic tone, but there were others now. At least 4, maybe 5 distinct voices. "Told you he'd be weakened after feeding," Marcus was saying. "The blood bond makes them sentimental, vulnerable. I smell the human." A woman's voice, cold and amused. "Fresh blood. He fed tonight. Which means he's stronger than anticipated." That was the red-haired vampire from before. "Marcus, perhaps we should—" "No." Marcus cut her off. "We end this now. Before the council meeting. Before he has a chance to present her as evidence of his engagement with mortals." Alara's blood turned to ice. They weren't here to talk. They were here to kill Caspian. She had to find him. Warn him. Something. She crept further down, reached the 3rd-floor landing. Below, she could see figures moving in the entrance hall. 5 vampires, all dressed for violence. Marcus stood at the center, holding something that glinted silver. A blessed blade, like the one she clutched in her sweating palm. "Spread out," Marcus commanded. "Find him. The human, too. We take them both. Make it look like a tragic murder-suicide. Poor Caspian. Driven mad by obsession, just like with Isabel." The vampires dispersed with inhuman speed. Ilara pressed herself against the wall, mind racing. She had to get to Caspian's room. 4th floor, the door at the end of the hall he'd told her never to open. She ran, up the stairs, her borrowed shoes slapping against wood. Stealth was impossible now. Behind her she heard a shout, pursuit. The vampires had heard her. She reached the 4th floor, sprinted down the corridor. The door at the end was different from the others. Heavy oak, bound with iron, symbols carved into the frame. She grabbed the handle, twisted, locked. Caspian. She pounded on the door. "Caspian, wake up! They're inside!" A vampire appeared at the end of the hall, the dark-skinned man from Marcus's group. He smiled, fangs gleaming. "Found her." Alara raised her knife, knowing it was useless. He was too fast, too strong, but she wouldn't go down without fighting. The vampire lunged. The door behind her exploded outward. Caspian emerged like a force of nature, moving faster than Alara had ever seen him move. He caught the attacking vampire by the throat, slammed him into the wall with enough force to crack plaster. His silver eyes blazed with fury, and for the first time Alara saw him as the ancient predator he truly was. "You dare enter my sanctum?" His voice was death itself. "Break the deepest law of the covenant?" The vampire clawed at Caspian's hand, choking. Caspian's grip tightened, and Alara heard bones crunch. "Caspian, there are 5 of them. Marcus is downstairs." He didn't look at her. "Get inside my room. Lock the door. Don't come out until I come for you. But now, Alara." She stumbled backward into his room. A space of Spartan simplicity, stone walls, a bed that looked like it hadn't been slept in for years. She started to close the door but couldn't look away. Caspian threw the vampire down the hallway. The sound of the body hitting the far wall was sickening. Then more vampires appeared, 2 of them, rushing Caspian from both sides. He fought like something from a nightmare. All grace and violence, silver blade appearing in his hand as if summoned. He moved between them like smoke, too fast to follow. Blood sprayed, black in the moonlight, as his blade found flesh, but he was outnumbered. And they were fresh, well-fed. The red-haired vampire caught his arm, twisted. Alara heard something pop. Caspian snarled in pain but didn't slow, using his momentum to drive his blade into her stomach. She screamed, fell back. Then Marcus appeared at the top of the stairs. Enough. His voice carried absolute authority. The fighting stopped. 3 vampires stood between Caspian and escape, all bearing wounds but still standing. Caspian himself was bleeding from a dozen cuts, his left arm hanging at a wrong angle, but his eyes never left Marcus. "You've violated sanctuary, broken the Covenant's most sacred law. The Council will execute you for this, will they?" Marcus smiled, moved closer. "Who will tell them? You? You'll be ash by dawn. The human? She'll be compelled to forget this night ever happened." He tilted his head. "Or perhaps we'll let her remember. Let her live with the knowledge that you died because of her, because you were too weak to let her go. Leave her out of this. Your quarrel is with me. My quarrel is with your continued existence." Marcus raised his blade. "You're a relic, Caspian. A reminder of a gentler time that's passed. The vampire world doesn't need honor. It needs strength." Caspian's grip tightened on his own weapon. Then face me properly, one-on-one, or are you too cowardly to fight without your pack? Marcus laughed. I'm pragmatic. Why risk injury when I have numbers? He nodded to his vampires. Take him, carefully. I want him conscious for what comes next. They moved as one, coordinated and lethal. Caspian fought brilliantly, centuries of skill evident in every parry, every strike. But he was injured, exhausted, and vastly outnumbered. They overwhelmed him through sheer numbers, drove him to his knees. Alara watched from the doorway, horror and fury warring in her chest. The knife felt useless in her hand. What could she do against 5 vampires? She was human, fragile, powerless. But then she remembered what Caspian had taught her. Physical combat was useless, but there were other defenses. Her hand found the vial of holy water at her belt. Marcus raised his blade above Caspian's heart. Any last words? Yes. Caspian's silver eyes found Alara's. Run. How touching. Marcus began to drive the blade down, Alara through the holy water. Her aim was perfect. The vial shattered against Marcus's face. He screamed, a sound of pure agony, stumbling backward as his skin smoked and blistered. The other vampires turned toward her, distracted. It was the opening Caspian needed. He surged upward, his blade finding the throat of the nearest vampire. The woman's head separated from her shoulders before she could scream. Caspian spun, caught another vampire in the chest. 2 down. But Marcus was recovering, his face already healing despite the damage. Kill the human! He roared. The red-haired vampire rushed at Alara. She raised her knife, knowing it wouldn't be enough. Caspian appeared between them, taking the vampire's claws across his back. He cried out but didn't fall, driving his elbow into her face. Bone crunched. She reeled backward. Alara, the cross on your wrist? Caspian shouted. Hold it out! She yanked the leather cord free, held the tiny silver cross forward. The red-haired vampire hissed, recoiling. The blessed metal gleamed with that sacred light Caspian had mentioned. Back into the room. Caspian positioned himself between her and the remaining vampires. Stay behind the threshold. Alara retreated, keeping the cross raised. The doorway to Caspian's room was carved with symbols. Wards, she realized. Stronger than the ones downstairs. The vampires couldn't cross without invitation, but Caspian was on the wrong side. Come inside, Alara called. You'll be safe. I can't leave you undefended. He faced Marcus and the 2 remaining vampires, wounded but unbowed. And they won't stop. Not until I'm dead or they are. Marcus wiped blood from his ruined face. You're already dead, Caspian. You just don't know it yet. He gestured to his companions. Together. Overwhelm him. They attacked in concert, a blur of claws and fangs and silver blades. Caspian fought like a god of war, every movement precise despite his injuries. But there were 3 of them, and only one of him. A blade pierced his side. He gasped, staggered. No, Alara couldn't watch this, couldn't let him die protecting her. She looked around desperately for something, anything. Her eyes fell on the iron brackets on the walls. The gas lamp's fire. Vampires burned, didn't they? She grabbed a lamp, smashed it against the wall. Fire bloomed, hungry and bright. She grabbed another, threw it into the hallway. The flames caught the old carpet, spread with terrifying speed. The vampires screamed, falling back. Marcus stared at the fire with something like fear. You mad girl? You'll burn the whole house down. Good. Alara's voice was savage. Burn with it. Caspian used their distraction, drove his blade through the dark-skinned vampire's heart. The body crumbled to ash instantly. 2 left, Marcus and the red-haired woman, but the fire was spreading fast. Too fast. Smoke filled the hallway. Caspian, please. Alara coughed, eyes streaming. Come inside. He looked at her, at the flames, at Marcus, making some terrible calculation. Then he ran, not toward her but toward Marcus. They collided in a tangle of limbs and blades rolling through the fire. Alara screamed his name. When they separated, both were burning. Marcus fled down the stairs, the red-haired vampire following. Their screams echoed through the house. Caspian staggered toward Alara. His clothes were on fire, his skin blackening. But he made it to the threshold, collapsed across it. Alara grabbed him, dragged him inside. beat out the flames with her bare hands. The door slammed shut behind them, sealing out the inferno. In the sudden quiet, she held Caspian's burned and broken body and wept. Chapter 9. Ashes and aftermath. Caspian's skin was healing, but slowly, too slowly. Alara watched the burns knit together in patches, revealing raw, angry flesh beneath. His breathing was shallow, labored. Vampires didn't need to breathe, but the body remembered trauma. Caspian, her voice cracked. Stay with me. Please stay with me. His silver eyes fluttered open, unfocused. The fire contained to the hallway. The wards on your room held. She didn't know if that was true, but she needed him calm, needed him to focus on healing instead of worrying. You're safe. We're safe. Marcus fled. They all did. Her hands hovered over his wounds, afraid to touch him, afraid to cause more pain. What do I do? How do I help you? Blood. The word was barely audible. Need blood, of course. He'd fed from her only hours ago, but the fight, the injuries, the fire, all of it had depleted him. Alara didn't hesitate. She grabbed the silver knife from where it had fallen, drew it across her palm. Blood welled up, dark red in the lamplight. She pressed her bleeding hand to his mouth. Caspian's eyes went wide. He tried to turn away, to refuse, but his body betrayed him. His fangs extended, pierced her wrist, and he drank with desperate hunger. Not the controlled feeding from before. This was survival, primal and urgent. Alara felt her strength drain faster this time. Her vision swam, legs buckled, but she stayed upright through sheer will, letting him take what he needed. The burns on his face began to fade faster. The wounds on his torso closed. When he finally pulled away, his eyes were clearer, but horrified. Too much. I took too much. You needed it. Alara's words slurred. The room tilted. Caspian caught her before she fell, cradled her against his chest despite his own injuries. Foolish, brave girl, you could have died. So could you. She pressed her face into his shoulder, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. Couldn't let that happen. He carried her to his bed, the first time she'd seen it properly. A massive four-poster, centuries old, covered in dark linens that smelled of him, cedar and night air and something indefinably ancient. He laid her down with infinite gentleness, then wrapped her bleeding hand in strips torn from his ruined shirt. Rest. He brushed hair from her face. I need to see the damage to the house. Don't leave. The words escaped before she could stop them, vulnerable and needy. Caspian's expression softened. I won't. I'll be just outside the door. He hesitated, then leaned down and pressed his lips to her forehead. The gesture was chaste, protective, and somehow more intimate than the feeding. Sleep, Alara. I'll keep watch. She wanted to argue, to stay awake, to make sure he was truly all right. But her body had other plans. Darkness pulled her under like a tide. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through narrow windows set high in the stone walls. Caspian's room was built like a fortress, she realized, stone on stone, minimal openings designed to withstand siege. How many times had he needed such defenses? She sat up slowly, her head pounding. The bandage on her hand was fresh, professionally wrapped. Someone had covered her with a thick blanket. And on the nightstand, another tray, water, bread, fruit, and a note in that elegant script. The house still stands. Marcus will answer for this. Rest while you can. Alara drank the water greedily, ate the bread. Her body screamed for sustenance after giving blood twice in as many nights. When she felt steady enough, she rose and opened the door. The hallway was destroyed. Blackened walls, ceiling caved in places, the carpet completely gone. But the fire had stopped at Caspian's doorway. The wards had held. Below she heard voices. She descended carefully, following the sound. Found Caspian in what remained of the entrance hall, speaking with someone she didn't recognize. The visitor was male, silver-haired, dressed in immaculate gray. His eyes were a pale blue that reminded her of winter ice. Lord Nathaniel. Caspian's voice was strained but respectful. I appreciate you coming so quickly. When I heard the second house attacked you in your own sanctum, I came immediately. Nathaniel's gaze swept the damage. This is unconscionable. A violation of our most sacred laws. Will the council act? They must. Marcus has overstepped catastrophically. Nathaniel's attention shifted to Ilara as she reached the bottom of the stairs. This must be the human causing such turmoil. Ilara Thorne. Caspian moved to stand beside her, a protective gesture. She saved my life last night. Fought when she should have fled. Nathaniel studied her with those ancient eyes. Did she indeed? He moved closer, and Ilara forced herself not to retreat. Tell me, Miss Thorne, did Lord Draven compel you to stay? Use any supernatural influence? No. Her voice was steady. I'm here because I choose to be. Even knowing the danger? The political consequences? Especially knowing them. She met his gaze. Caspian is fighting for something that matters. Honor. Consent. The idea that humans are people, not resources. She lifted her chin. If that makes me political, so be it. Something that might have been approval flickered across Nathaniel's face. Caspian, you've chosen well. He turned back to the younger vampire. I will call an emergency council session tonight. Marcus must answer for this attack before the Equinox negotiations begin. He paused. And you will bring Miss Thorne. Let the council see what inspired such desperation from the second house. Is that wise? Caspian's jaw tightened. Bringing her before the full council? It's necessary. They need to understand that this isn't about political maneuvering or territory. This is about the soul of our kind. Nathaniel moved toward the door. Tonight, midnight, the old cathedral. All 5 houses will attend. He was gone before either could respond, vanishing like morning mist. Caspian turned to Ilara, conflict written across his face. You don't have to do this. I can face them alone. We're partners, remember? She touched his arm, felt the tension in his muscles. Besides, if I don't go, Marcus will claim I'm being held captive. That you're the monster he says you are. I put you in danger, again, just like, don't. Ilara cut him off. Don't compare me to Isabel. I'm not her, and this isn't the same situation, isn't it? Another human woman in my home, targeted because of me? No, because I'm choosing this fight. She was forced into it. Ilara stepped closer, made him look at her. Last night when Marcus tried to kill you, I could have hidden, could have let you die and saved myself. But I didn't, I fought. And I'd do it again. Caspian's control cracked. He pulled her into his arms, held her with desperate strength. You terrify me, he whispered into her hair. The thought of losing you terrifies me more than anything has in 2 centuries. Ilara's arms came up around him, feeling the solid reality of him. Alive. Here. Safe. Then let's make sure you don't lose me. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the ruins of his home. Outside, the city was waking. Inside, 2 souls found anchor in each other. Finally, Caspian pulled back. If we're doing this, we do it properly. The council expects certain presentations. You'll need appropriate clothing. Training on how to address the houses. His hand came up to cup her face. And you need to understand what you're walking into. The council chamber isn't like the negotiations. It's older, more primal. The place where we settle our deepest disputes. Will there be fighting? There might be. If Marcus challenges my accusations, it could come to a formal duel. Then teach me what I need to know. Ilara covered his hand with hers. We have until midnight. Make me ready. Caspian searched her face, looking for doubt or fear. Whatever he found made him nod slowly. All right, but first you need more rest. You've given too much blood too quickly. I'm fine. You're pale as death and swaying on your feet. He guided her to the one intact sofa. Rest for 2 hours, then we'll begin. What will you do? Send messages. Call in favors. Prepare for war. His silver eyes were hard. Marcus broke the covenant, but I'm going to make sure he pays for it in front of every house lord in Ashenmoor. Ilara settled into the sofa, watching him move to his study. Even wounded, even exhausted, he moved with purpose, with the determination of someone who'd survived centuries by refusing to break. She closed her eyes, but sleep was elusive. Her mind kept returning to the attack, to the moment Caspian had thrown himself between her and the enemy, to the way he'd said her name like a prayer. Somewhere in the chaos and violence, something had shifted between them, something that went beyond gratitude or alliance. She could feel it in the way her heart raced when he was near, in the way his touch felt like coming home. It was foolish, dangerous. She was human, mortal, temporary in every way that mattered. And he was ancient, immortal, bound to a world she barely understood, but when she thought about leaving, about walking, away from Caspian and this strange new life, her chest ached with loss. 3 hours until midnight. 3 hours until she would stand before the Vampire Council and declare herself his ally. 3 hours until everything changed, one way or another. Alara touched the pendant at her throat, felt its familiar weight. Whatever came next, she would face it standing beside him, partners until the end. Chapter 10. The Council of Night. The old cathedral had been abandoned by humans for over a century, but the vampires had kept it pristine. Alara stood at the entrance, staring up at Gothic spires that pierced the night sky like accusations. Stained glass windows gleamed with inner light, gas lamps, not sunlight, casting colored shadows across ancient stone. Caspian stood beside her, transformed. He wore formal attire that looked like it belonged in another century. Black coat with silver buttons, high collar, boots polished to a mirror shine. His dark hair was pulled back, revealing the sharp planes of his face. He looked every inch the House Lord, powerful, dangerous, untouchable, but his hand found hers in the darkness, squeezed once, human, afraid. Last chance to turn back, he said quietly. Alara wore the dress he'd provided, deep midnight blue, simple but elegant, with a high neckline that concealed the healing marks on her throat. Her hair was pinned up, revealing the silver pendant that marked her as his. She'd never felt more exposed or more certain. I'm not leaving you to face this alone. Then stay close. Speak only when directly addressed. And remember, he met her eyes. Whatever happens in there, whatever you see or hear, don't show fear. The council can smell it. What will they do to Marcus? That depends on whether they believe me. Or him. Caspian's jaw tightened. He'll claim I provoked the attack. That I'm using you as a political tool. That I've become unstable, dangerous. And if they believe him, then I'll be executed and you'll be placed in another house's custody. He said it matter-of-factly, but she heard the tension beneath. Likely the second house. Marcus's custody. Ice flooded Alara's veins. Then we make them believe you. They entered together. The cathedral's interior took her breath away. The pews had been removed, replaced by a circular chamber of carved stone. 5 thrones stood at equal intervals around the circle's edge, each marked with a house symbol. Vampires filled the space, dozens of them, perhaps hundreds. All turned to watch as Caspian and Alara entered. The weight of their attention was crushing. Ancient eyes, beautiful faces, and beneath it all, the sense of barely restrained violence. These were apex predators playing at civilization. Lord Draven. Nathaniel's voice carried across the chamber. He sat on one of the thrones, the symbol of the first house carved above him. You stand accused of harboring a human under false pretenses. How do you answer? I answer that I've broken no law. Caspian's voice rang clear and strong. Miss Thorne came to me seeking sanctuary. I provided it under the terms of the covenant. She wears my seal, freely given, freely worn. And yet the second house claims you've used supernatural influence. Marcus stepped forward from the crowd, his face fully healed, wearing formal red. He looked regal, confident. That you've compelled this human to remain despite obvious danger. That you're repeating the mistakes that cost Isabel her life. The name hung in the air like poison. Alara felt Caspian tense beside her. I've compelled no one, Caspian said coldly. Unlike some, I still honor the spirit of our laws, not just the letter. Noble words from someone whose house is collapsing. Marcus smiled, showing fangs. Tell me, Caspian, how many vampires call the third house home? How many progeny have you created? How many political alliances have you forged? He spread his hands. You're a ghost holding on to territory through stubbornness alone. I'm a house lord who refuses to build power on the backs of coerced humans. Caspian stepped forward. But we're not here to discuss my political strategy. We're here because you violated sanctuary. Because you entered my home uninvited, attacked me in my own sanctum, and tried to murder both me and my guest. Murmurs rippled through the assembled vampires. Nathaniel raised a hand for silence. Lord Marcus, these are grave accusations. How do you answer? I answer that I acted within my rights under Article 7. Marcus's voice was smooth, reasonable. I had credible evidence that a human was being held against her will. I attempted peaceful verification, was denied, and therefore exercised my authority to investigate. When Lord Draven attacked my delegation, liar! Ilara's voice rang out before she could stop herself. Every vampire turned to stare. You broke into his home. You came with weapons. You tried to kill him. Ilara? Caspian's warning too late. Marcus's eyes gleamed with triumph. The human speaks? How unusual. Tell me, child. Did Lord Draven give you permission to address the council? Or have you forgotten your place? I forget nothing. Ilara stepped forward, past Caspian's restraining hand. I remember you and your vampires breaking down his door. I remember you saying you'd make it look like murder-suicide. I remember. Convenient memories from a compelled mind. Marcus's voice dripped false sympathy. Lord Nathaniel, this proves my point. An uncontrolled human, speaking out of turn, making wild accusations. Clearly, Lord Draven has lost the ability to properly manage his household. She's not compelled. A new voice, feminine and wry. Morgana stepped forward from the crowd, resplendent in crimson silk. I visited Lord Draven's home yesterday, spoke with Miss Thorne directly. She showed no signs of supernatural influence. Marcus's expression darkened. Lady Morgana, how unexpected to find you supporting our colleague. I support the truth. Morgana's golden eyes swept the council. Whatever Lord Draven's faults, and they are numerous, he's never been a liar. If he says Marcus violated sanctuary, I believe him. On what evidence? Another vampire called. A woman in green, seated on the 4th house throne. On the evidence of a burned house, a wounded house lord, and 2 dead vampires. Nathaniel's voice was sharp. Lord Marcus, where are the other members of your delegation? Marcus's confidence flickered. We encountered resistance. Some casualties were unavoidable. Casualties you haven't reported to the council, despite protocol requiring immediate notification of vampire deaths. Nathaniel stood, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. You broke sanctuary. You attacked a fellow house lord in his home. You concealed the deaths of your own house members. These are not the actions of someone enforcing Article 7. These are the actions of someone trying to eliminate competition before the equinox negotiations. Caspian's voice was ice and fury. You wanted my territory, Marcus. You wanted me gone, so you manufactured an excuse and attacked. Prove it. Marcus's mask had fully dropped now, revealing the predator beneath. You have no witnesses except your pet human and your own wounded pride. Actually, Morgana drawled, he has these. She held up a small leather pouch, dumped its contents onto the stone floor. Ilara saw metalwork, ash-stained and blackened. Pieces of vampire remains. I collected samples from Lord Draven's home this evening, Morgana continued, before the bodies could be completely disposed of. These are the remains of Cassandra Winters and Thomas Gray, both registered members of the 2nd house. She met Marcus's gaze. Both very recently deceased. The chamber erupted in voices. Nathaniel raised both hands for silence. This is damning evidence, Lord Marcus. Evidence of nothing, Marcus snarled. Those vampires acted without my knowledge. You just said we encountered resistance, the vampire in green pointed out. Which means you admitted to being present. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. This is a conspiracy. Morgana and Caspian, working together to undermine the 2nd house. Oh, please. Morgana rolled her eyes. If I wanted to undermine you, Marcus, I'd do it with considerably more style. This is simply about holding you accountable for breaking our most sacred laws. Nathaniel moved to the center of the circle. The evidence is clear. Lord Marcus violated sanctuary, attacked a fellow house lord, and caused the deaths of 2 vampires. Under the covenant, this merits severe punishment. He paused. However, Lord Marcus has the right to trial by combat. If he believes his actions were justified, he may challenge Lord Draven directly. The words hung in the air. Ilara's heart stopped. A duel. Here now, with Caspian still injured from last night. Marcus smiled slowly. I accept. Trial by combat. To the death. No. Alara didn't realize she'd spoken until every eye turned to her again. He's wounded. He can barely stand. It's not a fair fight. Fairness is irrelevant. Marcus's voice was cruel. He accepts, or he forfeits his territory and his life. Caspian's hand found Alara's, squeezed hard. I accept the challenge. Caspian, you can't. I can and I will. He turned to face her fully, his silver eyes blazing. This is the only way to prove the truth. To protect you, to save what's left of my house. You'll die. Perhaps. His hand came up to cup her face, heedless of the watching vampires. But if I don't fight, we both die. This way, at least you have a chance. What chance? If you lose, Marcus gets me. No. Caspian's voice was absolute. Before I fall, I'll make sure you're protected. Nathaniel will honor that. Won't you? If Miss Thorne is truly willing, I'll grant her sanctuary in the first house, Nathaniel confirmed. She'll be safe. Ilara looked at Caspian, at the vampire who'd saved her, sheltered her, trusted her with his vulnerabilities, who'd fought through fire to protect her, who held her like she was precious despite having every reason to send her away. There has to be another way. There isn't. He leaned forward, pressed his forehead to hers. But know this, Ilara Thorne, meeting you, protecting you, caring for you, none of it was a mistake. You reminded me what it means to fight for something beyond survival. Thank you for that gift. Before she could respond, he stepped away, moved to the center of the circle. Marcus joined him, both vampires circling like wolves. First blood or death? Nathaniel asked. Death, Marcus said. No other outcome will suffice. So be it. Nathaniel raised his hand. Let trial by combat begin. He dropped his hand. The vampires collided with inhuman speed, and Alara's world narrowed to the sound of clashing blades and her own racing heart. She couldn't lose. Him. Not now. Not when she'd finally found someone worth fighting for. Ilara's hand closed around the silver knife at her belt. If Caspian fell, she'd make sure Marcus followed him into death. Partners until the end. Epilogue. Dawn's promise. 3 months later. Ilara stood at the window of Caspian's study, their study now, watching the sun set over Ashenmoor. The city looked different from this vantage point, softer, full of possibility instead of threat. Behind her, she heard the familiar sound of his footsteps. Still careful, still controlled, but no longer quite so isolated, no longer alone. You're brooding again, Caspian said, his voice warm with affection as his arms came around her waist. I can tell by the way you stand. I'm thinking. She leaned back against his chest, felt the cool solidity of him. There's a difference, is there? His lips brushed her temple. What are you thinking about? That night, the council, how close we came to losing everything. The trial by combat had been brutal. Marcus, fresh and well-fed, against Caspian, wounded and exhausted. For 20 agonizing minutes, Ilara had watched them tear each other apart in the center of that ancient circle. Blood on stone. Fangs and claws and blessed silver finding flesh again and again. She'd been certain Caspian would fall. Certain she'd have to watch him die. But he'd fought with the desperation of someone who had too much to lose. And in the end, when Marcus had lunged for the killing blow, Caspian had moved with the last of his strength. A perfect strike, driving his blade through Marcus's heart. The second house lord had crumbled to ash before he hit the ground. We didn't lose, Caspian reminded her gently. I'm here. You're here. The third house still stands. Barely. But she was smiling as she said it. One vampire does not a house make, remember? But I'm not alone anymore. His arms tightened around her. I have you. Ilara turned in his embrace, looked up at the face she'd come to love. Sharp and beautiful, and finally at peace. Partners, she said softly. Partners, he agreed. Then, with careful hesitation, though I've been hoping we might renegotiate the terms of our arrangement. Her heart skipped. Oh? The equinox negotiations concluded last week. The council voted to maintain the 5 houses. The third house's territory was confirmed. He paused. And they've granted me permission to create progeny again. If the candidate is willing and understands the consequences. Alara's breath caught. They danced around this conversation for weeks, both afraid to speak it aloud. Caspian, I'm not asking. His voice was urgent, sincere. I would never ask that of you. Your mortality is yours to keep or surrender as you choose. But I wanted you to know. If you ever wanted eternity, if you ever wanted to stay beyond a human lifetime. He cupped her face in both hands. I would give you forever, if you'd have it. If you'd have me, tears pricked her eyes. I love you. You know that. And I love you. More than I thought possible. More than I've loved anyone in 3 centuries. His thumb brushed her cheek. But that doesn't mean you owe me immortality. I would rather have you for 50 mortal years than coerce you into an eternity you don't want. This was why she loved him. This vampire who valued her choice above his own desires. Who'd fought for her consent even when it cost him everything. I'm not ready, she said honestly. Not yet. I need time to be human. To experience this life fully before I give it up. To be certain. Then take all the time you need. He pressed his forehead to hers. I've waited 200 years for you. I can wait a few decades more. But you'll grow tired of watching me age. Never. The word was absolute. Every gray hair, every wrinkle, every year that marks your beautiful face, they'll be precious to me because they're yours. Because you lived, Alara. Really lived. His voice went soft. And when the time comes, if it comes, I'll give you the choice Isabel never had. Full knowledge, full consent, no pressure, no desperation. Alara kissed him then, pouring 3 months of love and trust and gratitude into it. He responded with centuries of loneliness finally finding its answer. When they broke apart, both were breathless. I do have one request, though, she said, trying to lighten the mood. Anything. Can we please hire someone to help with the house? The 4th floor still smells like smoke, and I am not spending my mortal years scrubbing soot from stone walls. Caspian laughed, the sound rich and genuine and so rare it made her heart ache with joy. I'll contact a service tomorrow, one that specializes in supernatural households. There are services for that? Darling, there are services for everything in the vampire world. You'll learn. He glanced at the darkening sky. Speaking of which, I believe Morgana is expecting us for dinner. Alara groaned. Do we have to? She still makes those comments about my delicious scent. She's teasing you. It's how she shows affection. He offered his arm. Besides, she's been invaluable in helping rebuild relationships with the other houses. We owe her? Fine. But if she tries to get me drunk on vampire wine again, you're carrying me home. Deal. They descended the stairs together, moving through the partially restored townhouse. The entrance hall had been repaired, new carpet laid, walls repainted. It was slowly becoming a home instead of a fortress, slowly learning to hold warmth again. Outside, night had fully fallen. Ashenmoor's streets were alive with humans going about their evening business, completely unaware of the ancient predators moving among them, unaware of the laws and politics and careful balance that kept them safe. But Alara knew now. Understood the weight of the covenant, the complexity of vampire society. She'd spent 3 months learning everything Caspian could teach her. History, politics, bloodline laws, house protocols. Knowledge that made her valuable beyond just being Caspian's companion. Several of the other houses had already approached her, asking if she'd consider serving as a liaison between vampire and human interests. A bridge between worlds. She was thinking about it. After all, if she was going to be part of this life, mortal or otherwise, she might as well make a difference. They walked through the city hand in hand, and Alara marveled at how much had changed in 3 months. How something that began in terror and desperation had transformed into this. Partnership, love, and the promise of choices made freely. Alara? Caspian's voice pulled her from her thoughts. Yes? Thank you. For what? For running into that alley 3 months ago? For being brave enough to follow a monster into the dark? For teaching me that maybe, just maybe, I'm worth saving too? His silver eyes gleamed in the lamplight. For reminding me what it means to hope. She stopped walking, pulled him close, and kissed him again beneath the stars. When she spoke, her voice was steady and sure. I'd do it all again. Every terrifying, impossible, beautiful moment of it. Even the fire? Especially the fire, she grinned. Though next time, maybe we could skip the assassination attempts? I'll see what I can arrange. They continued walking, two souls who'd found each other in darkness and chosen to build something new in the light. A human woman with a vampire's heart in her hands, a vampire lord learning to trust, to love, to believe in second chances. Behind them, the third house stood against the night sky, no longer crumbling, no longer alone. Still small, still vulnerable, but alive. Growing. And ahead, Morgana waited with wine and laughter, and the beginning of a new kind of family. Not bound by blood or house law, but by choice. By friendship forged in fire. The Council of Five Houses continued its ancient dance of power and politics. The covenant held, and in the spaces between immortal machinations, one human and one vampire wrote their own story. One choice at a time. One night at a time. Together.